Hey witches, welcome to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy, a magical living podcast for the busy witch. I'm Morgan, eclectic witch of almost 25 years, Avalon priestess, and busy witch. Here we'll talk all things witchy, from current metaphysical happenings to my busy witch tips and tricks, and everything in the in-between. This podcast is my personal journey, filled with my knowledge, opinions, and unique way of looking at the world. Join me as I weave the magical and the mundane in every episode. Hi witches, welcome back to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy. And today I have a very special guest. I'm very excited. I have Rieka Moonsong here with us to talk about plant and animal allies. So welcome, Rieka.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Is Rieka? Did I
Rieka,
say that?
yes.
Rieka?
It's fine. Nobody gets it right the first time. Yes, so no worries.
I even wrote it down. And it's one of those days, I think.
Well, yeah.
All right, so please tell listeners a little bit about yourself.
I am a Wiccan High Priestess. I'm actually training to become a member of clergy with our clan. So once I complete all of my lessons, do this big final test type thing, then I will, once I have a year, then I'll have my clergy papers. So that allows me to do hand fastings, um, wickenings, death rites, all of that stuff. So I've worked with plants, animals, the Fae my entire life. I just didn't realize what it was for most of those years. I guess I've always considered myself a magical person, even when it wasn't, allowed. I'm also an Andean tradition trained shaman. Through that, we really learn how to work with plant and animal guides, messengers, allies, all that stuff, even mountain and river allies and stuff. So
That
yeah,
is very awesome.
it is. Yes.
I love all of that. So you've been working with plant and animal allies for like estimated ballpark, how many years?
Well, my wolf guide spirit, she first came to me as a young girl. And again, I didn't know what was because a lot of times especially when I was a lot younger, I had trouble distinguishing, am I seeing it with my eyes or my third eye? So things appeared very real and solid to me. But I was a young girl. I had been sick. My mother and grandmother were taking me to the hospital. And I'm like, Mimi, there's a wolf in the back seat. And they're like, no, sweetie, you just have a fever. And I'm like, no, she's right there. She's just as real as, sitting here. And I'm like, I'm not scared. She's just here to help me. So I think even way back then, those allies were coming to me. I just didn't recall, or didn't know what to call it because always been a part of me. The trees sing. I talk to the trees. People just thought I was this weird, little child. Oh, she's got cute imaginary friends, whatnot. But no, I've always talked to the plants, talked to the animals. And for me, they talk back. So yeah, it's more recently learning within, I guess, the last 15, 20 years, knowing, okay, these are actual real guides, allies, messengers that are coming to me to be here. I lovingly call my animals my herd because I have a lot of them that some of them, like my wolf, has always been with me. Some of the other ones have come with a message or for a period of time and they just kind of stayed. So I have a lot of them that just like to hang out and, then sometimes there's just one messenger. A deer appears on the trail and it's like, hey, you have work to do. This is what it is. And I'm like, cool, thanks. Same thing with, plants. I'll be drawn to a specific plant for a time and not really, when I think about the metaphysical qualities and I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. So, but yeah, really working with them on a metaphysical level, probably the last 15 or so years.
That's really cool. So like, I think if for those listeners that even are beginner, you are talking about like the energy of different, how the energy of plants is like each plant is different, and you're working with that energy for magical purposes, or that energy or the symbolism of that animal for magical or metaphysical purposes.
Right. Yes. So, if you look up online, there's plant dictionaries, metaphysical ones that tell you this specific plant has, sun energy, it has masculine energy, and it's good for X, Y, and Z. So it's those types of energies. And sometimes, like I said, a plant, I'll be super like, oh, there's this, I'm in love with, let's say, just peonies for a certain time period. And you don't really know why. And I don't even know what their magical properties are off the top of my head. But you go and look them up and you feel like, oh, it's calling to me because there's healing work that this plant can provide. And from a shamanic background, um, you learn that all of these plants, flowers, trees, all the things, they have a song. And when you start to work with them more and more and more, the plant will teach you its song. And then you can utilize that energy and help you in your practice, in your personal life, whatever, without actually having the plant there with you. And that is a truly, magical thing, because we burn, herb bundles and things like that for cleansing, for healing. We add them to spell jars, we add them to our, rituals. And all of that is because those plants have the specific property that we're looking for. But when you really work with them and learn them and they get to know you too, there's a bond that's created there. And that's when these plants become your allies. Like rosemary is one of my plant allies, and she's amazing and I love her. Um, and it's like it's a calming thing where for a lot of people it's very uplifting and things like that. For me, it's just it grounds and centers me. Um, Same thing with like the bristlecone pine tree. It's teaching you about your ancestors because it's one of the longest lived trees, and it grows in this environment that's at 10,000 feet. There's not a lot of plant life, when you get into that higher elevations, but it's teaching you about living through adversity and in hard times and things like that. And you'll get through it and you'll thrive. So again, all of these plants, and again, the animals too, they have the energies and they come to us with messages, with healing, all of that stuff. So yeah, for newbies, if you find yourself drawn to a particular plant or herb or an animal, a tree, it's calling to you for something. It's there to help you with something in your life, your magical practice, spiritual, emotional, whatever it may be. So open up and listen.
Do you find too, like for your personal practice, do you venture into like the medicinal uses of plants, like, or have you strictly stayed kind of with metaphysical, magical?
Oh no, absolutely. I take a lot of herbal supplements. I have asthma, so mullein is a huge plant for me, and it grows here in Colorado everywhere. Um, but they also, would you find out, I'm a big hiker and backpacker. You find out if you mug poultice out of mullein, if you have a rash or you get a scrape, you can just slap that right on there, and it's great. It's a great healing property. Um, Other things, ashwagandha, St. John's wort, all of those things. So yes, I do incorporate those just for health benefits and things like that too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
my go-to is calendula.
Yes.
And in my household, like there's a jar of calendula oil in the medicine cabinet. There's some calendula salve. So if anybody has any kind of skin thing, I'm like, go put calendula oil on it. Go do that.
And see, I do that with lavender. That's my go-to for skin irritations and things like that. Oh, just rub some lavender on it. It'll.
Yeah. So you've mentioned some of your favorite plant allies, but what are some of your favorite animal allies?
My wolf, definitely. I actually found out this specific ally has been with me in previous life, so it's that energy just kind of come with me into this, into this incarnation. I am in love with the osprey, the raptor, the osprey. It has amazing energy. And I was just last year, I realized that, oh, Seahawk, that's how the Seahawks in football got their name because it's literally a fishing bird. But they're very widespread. And like I said, their energy is amazing. The snake is a big one. It has been with me for a very, very long time. For as long as I can remember, I actually dreamt about snakes. It was a recurring dream. Like I would see one and be like, oh, and there's a snake. And then I look and there's another one. And then before I knew it, there were snakes everywhere. And it was random places like the grocery store, the mall, outside, wherever. It was just very strange. I never felt in danger. I never felt threatened. They were venomous snakes. They were non-venomous. They were just everywhere. And then I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh, I had another snake dream. And it wasn't until more recently I learned, oh, this snake, people are born healers, born shamans, things like that. And that's what that was telling me is like, oh, you had it all along. And then once I kind of realized that, they stopped happening. But the snake is still very prevalent in my life. Absolutely.
That's what we have. My creative director here, Megan, is going through that right now. She has rattlesnakes show up in her backyard, which is pretty prevalent in Tucson. But she lives like in northern Tucson, and there shouldn't be a lot, like a very populated area. So rattlesnakes should not be something that she sees, but she has them in her yard all the time. She's starting to go through all that. And I actually went through that a few years ago. I personally dislike snakes heavily. Like we are talking pretty big fear of snakes. And so when they started showing up for me, like in my house, I was like, I had to take a few and be like, because they started showing up a lot. And that's when I went, okay, what is the bigger meaning? Because if I continue to resist them, they're going to continue to show up. And I don't need that right now. So my fear of snakes has reduced a lot. I still am not a fan. Like if we have one show up in our backyard, that's my husband's territory. He needs to go deal with that. But at that moment, I will acknowledge the energy. Because for me, it was about transformation and kind of digging down inside of yourself. And so when they started popping up for me years ago, I really had a lot of self-reflection to do. And so now if they pop up, I'm like, okay, I must be ignoring a certain part of myself or not, diving down. So let me go meditate. Let me go, because I don't need them showing up at the office. Like, just not a huge fan.
Yeah. And snakes teach us a lot about boundaries too, specifically the venomous one. The rattlesnake gives the warning. It's like, hey, there's something you need to address. And I have a boundary here. And, but they teach us that, like, are you setting and maintaining healthy boundaries? What does that look like for you? Is there something toxic that is coming into your life that you need to, again, set boundaries? And of course, like you mentioned, transformation. And they also, the shedding of their skin, and they do that to get rid of parasites. And if they get an injury, so that's also a healing process too. Snake is a very healing. You think about in yoga practice too, they talk about Kundalini energy, how it comes up, and that's that fire. And then going into my shamanic practice, we have Sacha Mama, and she is the mother of the waters. It's actually an anaconda. So it takes on a whole different view of what the snake means, because you've got that water element in it. Again, it's about healing, about going with the flow, being one with your element. And she's also teaches us how to walk on the mother and feel the vibrations around you. And what is it telling you? What are the vibrations telling you? And just how to, calm yourself and be one with that environment. And she's pretty phenomenal.
I love that. I do have a question that I just want to know your opinion of, because it seems to be pretty split, I think, in the witchcraft community. And that is pets as familiars. Like, is there a difference between like an animal familiar, or can your pet be your familiar? Can your pet be an animal ally for you, or are we talking about like two completely different things here?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. So yes, you can have a pet that is a familiar. However, just because you love your pet and your pet loves you does not mean it is your familiar. A familiar is an entity that makes a bond and covenant with a witch for magical help, for protection, for helping you on your life journey. And that energy can stay with you. So, my familiar has actually reincarnated. And this is her fourth incarnation: a cat, a dog, no, yes, a dog, a cat, a dog, a cat. And it's that same energy. One of the ladies in my coven, she actually had a familiar that was a horse, and then she did a lot of transformation work, and a different familiar came into her life that was a cat. But we can have familiars that are not our pets. You can have the frog that hangs out in your backyard all the time. That is a familiar. Or, the raven that visits you every single day as a familiar, and you work with their energy. You call on them, you ask them to bring that energy. And even if they're not showing up for you in physical form, and that's the other thing, you can have a familiar that has not made it to the physical level. They can still be hanging out in the metaphysical realm. They don't have to be incarnated. But you call on that energy and they come to you when you need help, magical boosts, protection, all of that. But no, absolutely. It does not have to be a pet, and not all pets are familiars for sure.
I love talking about that because I have a cat who came to us via another, like, we went in to adopt a black cat because I had had a dream about one, and he was at the shelter as well. We ended up adopting a black cat, so we ended up with two cats that day because I could not, there was something about my little ginger, his name is Castiel, and he and I, since the day we brought him home, have been inseparable. But when I sat there and I was like, okay, is there something more to this? I kind of tested it. And that cat, the minute I step into my sacred room, he's like, what are you doing without me? Please let me
Mm-hmm.
in. I have to be here. And like, I can go to any other room in the house. He doesn't care. He's like, whatever, go do your thing. The minute I step into that room, he's like, I don't know what you're doing in there, but I want in. And so I will be meditating. He will curl up in my lap. Like, and he's not like, there are nights when I'll be laying, on the couch or something, and I'll be like, Cass, come cuddle, come cuddle. And he's like, nah, I'm good. But but the minute I go into that room,
Mm-hmm.
he has to be there with me. He has to be in my lap or touching me in some way. He'll sleep next to me while I'm meditating with just a paw on my knee. And that's where I'm like, okay, so this cat loves some magic. Like, so
Yeah.
that's where I have to think, okay, maybe there is something. But I'll post about him online and I'll have people be like, just because you have an attachment to your cat doesn't mean that he's your familiar. And I'm like, well, that's rude, first of all, because no, I know the difference. Like, we have two other cats and another dog. I don't consider them my familiars. They're there. But there's something about Cass where, and if my energy's low, he's there on me. If I need to pick me up, he's the one that's there in my face, like trying to switch my energy, or just curling up with me if that's what I need, if I'm sick or something. So that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think it's pretty online. Like, there's just as many people saying, yes, your pets can be your familiars, but then there's people that are like, no, your pets are not your familiars at all. That's only. So I wanted to ask.
Well, and when you think about it, having a familiar as a pet, it's very convenient because they are there physically with you. It's easier to interact with them. It's like you said, you go into your magical space, your sacred space, and they're right there. Cats are naturally magical beings to begin with, but it goes much deeper because you can have them as a guide. They'll just come to you as a messenger. If you have a stray cat that just shows up on your porch and it's like, hey, and you're like, hey, you get a little message about, like, don't do this. Thanks. It goes on its merry way because it delivered the message. Or, like you said, you have other cats in the home, but they're just there, they hang out, whatever. But it's that deeper bond, that deeper connection. They feed you energy. And it's the same thing that goes with a dog or a bird. There's lots of different pet people, like I mentioned, have a horse as a familiar. So it can be any animal. And it can, like I said, it doesn't have to be an incarnation as a physical being. They can come to you totally spiritually. Um, and it's funny. So my familiar, I didn't realize what she was when I was young, but it was their protector. That was her main or their main thing when I was young. And I guess to teach me some things, but I didn't really realize it again, because, naive. I didn't, magic is bad and, can't talk about that because I grew up in Texas and I was just talk about those things. But also, when my previous incarnation, when she passed away, it hit me really hard. And it was, so she passed in the summer of 2017. That Samhain, her spirit came to me and was like, "You have to let me go." I'm like, "I can't. Feels like half my heart is gone." She said, "I'll come back to you. You just have to let me go." And I'm like, "I don't know how." And she's like, "Just, let the energy go, let it go." So she worked with me. We did, a working in her spiritual form, obviously. And I was able to let go of some of that grief and just really let go of that energy of hers that I was still holding on to unknowingly. And then a couple of months later, I was hiking with a friend, one of my coven sisters actually, and she's like, "I see a cat around you." She's looking around, and I was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Yeah, my Oreo, that was my previous dog." I was like, "Yeah, she told me she would come back to me as a cat." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, see a cat." She was like, "Yeah, it's very all around you, just like, oh my gosh, can't wait to come to you." Fast forward to 2021, I live in Colorado. I had gone to several pet adoptions, like, okay, my cat, my cat. I wanted a black cat because witches and black cats. Um, Several pet adoptions, looking at all the things, Dumb Friends League, nothing clicked. I go to Texas to visit my friend. And there's this pet adoption they're hosting at their brewery. They open up the back of the van. I was like, "Oh, there you are." And she reached out her little paw, and it was literally very like, "There you are." Like, oh. And it took me traveling, I was like, "How do I get her home? I flew here. I'm in Colorado. You're in Texas." And they're like, "Oh, well, we come up to Colorado once a month to deliver pets up there." And I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me." Like, it was that type of, these are how these beings come to us. It's meant to be type of thing. It absolutely 1,000% is. It's that, that energy that is tied to you in just an unbreakable way.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on like working with, I guess, mythical animals, creatures, like dragons, unicorns, things like that?
Oh, I absolutely work with dragons. 1,000%. I love their energy so much. Um, just because we can't see something, which, we know as witches and spiritual magical people, just because you don't see it with your eyes doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There are so many other realms and planes out there, the astral, this and that, but so many places that we can journey to. Those lines can be crossed with that energy coming here. But absolutely, it's, they can be a little bit more difficult to work with, and there are definitely a lot more, what is the word I'm looking for? Uh, uh, I totally blanked out with a word there. Etiquette. There's a lot more etiquette when it comes to working with these beings, because you don't just call a dragon. Their energy comes to you because it wants to. And same thing with a lot of them, but that's not something you play around with too. But if they're coming to you, if you're feeling that energy around you, um, there's a reason they're calling out to you. And I feel like those that this energy is coming to and approaching, it's kind of a calling type of thing to be able to work with that energy. And it's definitely, you should take it as a very high praise and very beneficial for lots of different reasons. Definitely unicorns too. I've had interactions with that type of energy. It's absolutely, there are no words. Haven't gotten into too many of the other ones, but absolutely.
I think
How
another
about you?
question, yeah, another question I get asked a lot is if there's an animal that shows up maybe once, I kind of like I've had my coven members ask me like, how many times does something need to show up before it's a sign? And I think that's what I tell them. Like if you have one interaction, you know, like a bird flies in front of your car, like let's say a raven flies in front of your car, and that's the only time you've ever seen the raven, and it didn't try to like hit your windshield or something. Maybe that wasn't a sign for you to be working with raven energy. But, you know, if it's a weird occurrence,
Mhm.
or if it's a either multiple animals or multiple instances with one animal, that's what I tell them. Like maybe now you should be looking into that. Is that what you found as well?
Yes, and it can vary though, because again, I'm a hiker. I see deer on the trail all the time.
Yeah.
Not, anything new to me. However, if all of a sudden the deer stops and looks at me, it's like, oh, okay. Because it's the feeling, the message that you're getting. And it's sometimes, yeah, a raven flying across your path is just a raven flying across your path. I get people that ask, a bunny showed in my yard. What does it mean? It's spring. The bunnies are out. That's what it means. But if you're sitting there and then you see a bunny and it's like, it's time for new beginning. It's time for growth. It's time to water that, they're all about fertility and all that stuff. And not just your own like reproductive fertility, but about ideas and stuff. If you're getting these feelings that come across, it's absolutely a message and that can be interpreted. So it's about being open to what's happening in that moment. And that's why, we have animals come to us as messengers, as guides, and then as our familiars. And there's, messenger just kind of shows up, or it may show up continually, like you talk about, like, okay, the raven's showing up every single day for a week, and it won't leave until you get the message. Are you listening? Are you paying attention? And then once you're like, oh, okay, it leaves. And you may never see it again. It really, I think, just depends on the thing and being open to interpretation. But yeah, sometimes it's just an animal that's there. Doesn't necessarily mean anything.
What are some of your like favorite ways to work with plant and animal allies?
Um, Plant allies, I will call their energy to me. Like I said, rosemary, I can call the energy to me to just kind of help calm me down and ground me. I use them a lot in herb bundles. I have, I'm lucky to live where there's lots of things that grow that are very um, useful here. Pine and stuff, cleansing, all that stuff. So I'll use them in herb bundles, definitely little spell jars. I'll have my little cauldron, throw some things in there. Sometimes it's just intuitive. I don't know what this, let's just throw it in because I'm being called to throw that in there regardless of what it means. It's going to do something. So like spell work, ritual, cleansing, smoke, all that good stuff. Um, and then with the animals, it can be the same thing. They can be an energy boost. They can protectors, definitely. Um, they get very territorial, and I'll feel them if I kind of feel myself in a situation, and I'm like, it's okay, guys, let's just settle down. But a lot of that is asking them too, like, what do you need to tell me? Is there something I need? So they act as guides too and messengers because they're the go-between sometimes, between your higher self. If you're not feeling like you're that open, it's the same thing if you're doing an oracle card or a tarot card reading, it's opening up to those messages that you need that kind of intermediary, you need that mediator to help deliver that message to you. So I love them both for that. And it's, sitting in meditation, like we do shamanic journeys. So there's the lower world, the middle world is where we live, the upper world is where all of the like ascended masters are, like you think all of them. And then the lower world, that's where the animal allies live. And so you can do a lower world journey and go there, and whoever shows up for you may be who you need. It may not be your familiar or anything you've ever met before, but they come to you for a message. So a lot of that is just asking them, what do I need to know? What can you help me with? And then I leave, offerings and things like that, because that's appropriate when working with animals, I believe.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. All right. I don't have any more questions. Is there anything else about, plant or animal allies that you wanted to talk about today?
I just think for people that are beginning to go down this path, just be open to the energy. It's not taking anything for granted, but it's also, again, not seeing a bunny and being like, oh my God, it's a sign. But really being open to it, again, and reiterating, if you feel very called to work with something, then you're being called to it for a reason. So research it, learn about it. If you're being called to, I don't know, daisies, go to the store and get a batch of daisies and sit with them, meditate with them, find out what that flower is trying to tell you. Open up to its energy and do it with your heart, with your soul. And, you can do it with some protection if you're worried about it. But if that energy is coming to you, it's not coming to you to harm you. It's coming to you for a healing reason, a metaphysical reason, something along those lines. And you may find out like, oh, well, okay, well, Daisy is my ally and it's here to show, happiness and joy. It's uplifting flower. It's, I call it's the happy flower. Same thing for the animals. Sit with their energies and, meditate, find out what they are trying to tell you, because they're there for a reason.
I've the only other thing that came to mind is I was told one time that if there is a plant that you like, when you smell the plant or you work with the plant, you have an aversion to it, that is actually, or that actually means that you need to work with it more, because that plant has some kind of property to it that you're resisting within yourself or your life. And I didn't know if you've ever heard that before.
I haven't, but my take on it would be it's probably similar to you. Like, I hate snakes, and then they start showing up everywhere. It's because you need to work with it. So if there's a certain plant around, you're like, absolutely not. I hate the smell of rosemary. Find out why.
Mine was frankincense. For a few years there, I could not handle the smell of frankincense. And that's when I was talking to someone about it, and they were like, oh, that means you have to work with frankincense. And I'm like, but I don't like the smell of it. They're like, that means that there's something in frankincense that you need to work with. And I'm like, oh, all right. Now I don't have an aversion to frankincense because I forced through it. But I've had a lot of people say, oh, like they don't like patchouli, or they don't like ylang ylang, or rosemary is another one. And I'm like, that means, like, I tell them, I'm like, maybe you should work with it.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Think of it too, like, how they say if there's somebody that has a bad habit that's irritating you, or there's something very specific about someone that's irritating you, you need to reflect and find out, okay, why is that affecting me so much? Why am I being so triggered by that? Because there's something you need to work on within yourself, because that's triggering you. It's the same thing with, the plants and the animals. If you have an aversion to something, it's there for a reason. It's not just fear because you think, okay, well, people are afraid of snakes, people are afraid of spiders. Well, why? Why are you afraid of them? Spiders are all about weaving the web of life. There are a lot of divine feminine energy too. It's creative energy. and they sit in the dark and in the sunshine. So they're both light and dark. It's about bringing those two aspects together. They're hunters. You think about like, oh, well, they're just ambush predators. Well, not all of them, but think about all those energies of the snake, the spider, whatever animal, whatever plant it is that, really bothers you about them. And well, they have so many eyes and they're creepy. Okay, well, does that mean you feel like you're being watched? Or like, what are you not seeing? Like, type of thing. I agree 1,000% that it's, some type of version, it's giving you a message about something you need to work with. Yeah.
And I love that. All right. So tell people where they can find you or what you have coming up or where they can find things that have to do with you.
I am on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, just a mountain witch. So it's JUSTA and then mountain and then witch. I do have a YouTube, although I'm not really great about posting there, but I do have it. My website, justamountainwitch.com. There's also my blog that's on there as well. And then I do have 4 books. 2 of them are already out. Cat Magic and Animal Magic are both out. These are both teaching how to work with animal energy. Cat Magic is all about, cat familiars and guides and things like that. But it also discusses, how do you open up to that energy? How do you call it in? It even has big cat energy in there. Because people think, oh, house cats. No, those big guys, they're super fun. Super fun. And then Animal Magic is obviously more broad, lots of different animals. There's incantations in there that actually help you invoke the energy of various animals or, feline spirits or whatnot. And then coming out September 10th, I believe, is Owl Magic. Of course, working with owls, messengers, guides, familiars, all of that energy. And again, how to call that in. Spells and rituals in here, journey work, all that stuff. And then in October, Sea Magic will be out. And all those can be found Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Books A Million, Bookshop, a whole bunch of things. There's links in my Instagram and Facebook for where you can find all of those. But yeah, a lot of them, Sea Magic's obviously just working with the ocean, but there are animals in there too, because animals are near and dear to my heart. I work with so many of them, and I love the bond that we can have with them. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rieka, for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Morgan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and to the listeners out there, please, I'm going to put all of her links and everything in the show notes. And so please check out Rieka Moonsong and her books, her website, all of that good stuff. And thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me a platform to have amazing guests like Rieka on here. And I will see you all again soon.